Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
And it's great to be back here, folks. Great to be back here in the Excellence in Broadcasting Network of the EIB Southern Command, Rush Limbaugh. As always, behind the golden EIB microphone at 800-282-2882. Email address if you want to go that way, lrushbo at eibnet.com. For those of you watching on the Ditto Cam, you may notice that each and every day there are subtle changes being made in the picture here. We're changing the lighting day by day, and I have come to find out things are always happening behind my back here. Well, not everything, but I mean many things go on behind my back here. And I have learned that associates, we shall call them, are eventually going to push me to apply makeup every day on this program to get rid of the glare on my forehead. I also have found there have been behind-the-scenes discussion between the broadcast engineer here and lighting specialists at Fox News in order to improve, shall we say, the look of the Ditto Cam. Now, all fine and dandy, except that it's happening behind my back, which tells me that people are aware I wouldn't be all that supportive of this. So they are doing it anyway. What do you mean tell me if I went to the meetings? They don't even tell me about the meetings. And I know the makeup looks good, but it's a radio show, for crying out loud, and it's always going to be a radio show, and I'm not going to let people turn this into a TV show. The next thing you want to know, they're going to want a switcher in here where I can play the actual video of audio sound bites, and it's not happening. There's a reason radio is radio and TV is TV. Anyway, the subtle lighting changes on the Ditto Cam, they're good, I have to admit. Still have the forehead shine, and there's nothing to do about that except makeup, and that is not happening. Okay? No, it won't stay at a little powder. It starts out as powder, and then we have a full-time makeup artist in here. Another commie babe will show up here every day. I got a debate before I do the program while the makeup goes on. No, don't. Anyway, I had a great time yesterday, folks. More details on this later, but it was the annual Ernie Els for Autism charity golf tournament at Palm Springs, or at Palm Beach Gardens. It was up at the Old Palm golf course. It's Raymond Floyd was one of the developers and designers there, and Louis Oosthuizen was our pro yesterday from South Africa. I had a great time. One of the most fun days. Rudy Giuliani was in the foursome. Marvin Shanken, co-sponsor of the affair with Ernie Els. It was a great time, and it was one of these frustrating. This ball striking was just par excellence. I was just creaming the ball. I was striping everything, but I wasn't scoring well. And Oosthuizen took me and says, you're having one of the most frustrating days that we pros can have. You're hitting the hell out of the ball. I mean, your ball striking's great, but you're not scoring. And it's true, but the ball striking was so good, I was happy with that. It made it fun. Okay. Folks, there's a lot to get to here today. We've got the Michigan, they're calling this Little Tuesday. The Michigan primary, the big one, up for grabs today. And the polling data, it's interesting. The polling data says that Trump's lead in all the remaining states is narrowing. In Florida, we had a little intrigue. CNN had a story saying that Rubio people want Rubio to get out of Florida, leave the campaign before next Tuesday, because he's going to take such a beating that it might be harmful to his reputation. Get out now, save the reputation, no chance of winning anyway. Ted Cruz is opening 10 campaign offices in Florida this week. Ted Cruz knows he can't win Florida, but it's obviously designed to take votes away from little Marco. Quote, unquote, I'm just kidding. Take votes away from Rubio. And people say, this is typical. This is a Cruz dirty. This is not a Cruz dirty trick. This is payback. Rubio opened a bunch of offices in Texas to try to stop Cruz. It's not dirty tricks. It's politics. Maybe it's indistinguishable, but it's not dirty tricks. Who put this Rubio story out? There's only one source. CNN claims there's one source. They're relying on one source. It's Jamie Gangel. She says, I got one source here, highly reliable source. The Rubio campaign denying anybody in their camp said anything. What if it's Ben Carson? What if Ben Carson wants to have one more? I'm just kidding. I couldn't help myself. Anyway, interesting take on the results of the primaries on last Saturday. There were 4 of them. See if I can remember. There was Kentucky, there was Kansas, there was Louisiana, and what is the 4th? I'm a mental block on the. There's 4 and there's anyway. Trump won 2 and Cruz won 2. But here's the thing. Ted Cruz won all 4 of them if you only count people who voted Saturday. The early voting in all these states, in 2 cases, 2 states went to Trump. That was the margin of victory in 2 of the 4 states on Saturday for Trump early voting. If you just tabulate the votes of people that showed up that day. Now, this is not to say that Cruz should have won. No, that's not the point. The point is that they're late deciders, or they are people making up their minds toward the end who voted that day. So a statistic like that, according to political professionals, tells you that you can spot a trend. And it's the drive-bys and the Republican establishment who are trying to tell us what the trend is. And, of course, their interest is for the trend to be away from Trump. And so, right on schedule, we have a couple of polls today showing Trump's lead in Florida is now no longer double digits. It's single digits. In fact, the first poll showed Trump 35, Rubio 30. It was an ARG poll, American Research Group. And they are what's the word on them? They're a specialty group, not really, I don't think, known in the big universe of polling units. And it was widely thought to be a poll that, as we say here, not really designed to reflect public opinion, but to shape it. And there's a second poll that's come down the pike, and it's either Monmouth or I forget what Monmouth. What's it now? Trump by 8 in Florida, and the same thing's happening supposedly in Michigan, where a once double-digit lead enjoyed by Trump is now whittled down to a single-digit lead, and in Michigan, Kasich is supposedly gaining ground in Michigan. Is there somebody told me he's driving around in a mail truck to campaign? Is that true, or is this somebody just joking with me? Well, the thing is, you can. I know, it's one of those jokes that's rooted in. Okay, so let's get to the news of the day. There are a couple of things. I will talk about the Fox News appearance in detail with sound bites later. The 2 things that I want to recite from that appearance. And the first one is the first point that I made. And I really think this is a remarkable thing that's happening that is not being commented on. It's stunning, really. Now, I've mentioned it to you before on the program, but I had this the first time I had made the point on television, and I had made a point. I decided I was going to lead with this no matter what Chris Wallace's first question was. And it's this. I don't know for how many years, but it's a number of them, 4 years, 5 years. The Republican Party has been telling its voters that it cannot win, that we cannot win with Republican votes alone. And I've had candidates. Mitt Romney has been to my office here. So was Rand Paul. They both said the same thing. And this is not recently. Well, Rand Paul maybe a year ago and Romney 2 or 3, or 4 years now. But anyway, it's a popularly held axiom in the Republican Party. They can't win with just Republican votes alone. And the second part of it is there's a whole bunch of Republican votes that embarrass them. Evangelicals, conservatives. Remember Jeb Bush? He was going to win the general without winning the primary, meaning he was going to find a way to get the nomination bypassing the Republican base. We see how that worked out for him. And this is why we are told the Republican Party must show that it can get along with minorities, that it does not dislike minorities, that it's not racist, sexist, bigoted, homophobic, or what have you. And therefore, this is why the Republican Party must join with the Democrats and promote amnesty for illegal immigrants, for the procurement, shall we say, of the Hispanic vote. And they have openly said to us conservatives who are unhappy about the way they're governing, they are ignoring their own campaign promises. They are ignoring the will of Republican voters in the last two midterms, 2010, 2014, by telling us, no. We have to branch out. We have to become a bigger, more inclusive party, right? Well, as I said on Fox News Sunday, who is it that's actually done that? It's Donald Trump. Donald Trump has actually put together the exact kind of coalition the Republican Party has been telling us that it needs in order to win, that it will not win if it doesn't succeed in branching out and expanding the party. And the expansion includes people that were normally qualified as Reagan Democrats, Hispanics, African Americans, women. Trump is doing it, and there's mounds of evidence for it. Let's look at some of the open primaries that have taken place. A number of Democrats, as we predicted, Trump's going on, he's actually playing to them, and they are crossing the aisle and voting for Trump in these primaries. In closed primaries where they can't cross over and vote for Trump, Republicans are winning those. Cruz primarily is winning Republican primaries that are closed, like Oklahoma was closed. Now, Trump is specifically making a play for this group, and in this group of people is white middle-class voters who the Democrat Party has written off. And Dan Balls, I think it was Dan Balls, a former Washington Post columnist, wrote in November of 2011. 2011. That the Democrats plan to write off white working class votes. And if you look at Obama's economic policy, look at Obama's Obamacare policy, he is. White working class voters are persona non grata, and Trump's getting them. He's getting them in droves. And the Republican Party doesn't want them. It's the most amazing thing. Trump is actually putting together what the Republican Party has told us is the coalition they cannot win without. And now apparently they really don't want to expand the party to include white middle-class Democrats, Hispanics, and others from the Democrat Party if Trump is responsible for bringing them. Look at it this way. Trump has assembled a package the GOP says it desperately needs and wants in order to win in the future. But now they're not interested because they don't like the delivery company. And I made this point, and I made it big. And the second point, and I think that's crucial. I think it's because it's an indictment of the current Republican Party. It's an indictment of the Republican establishment. It means one of two things. Either they are just telling us this as an excuse for not implementing policies we have voted for them to implement, and they really don't mean it. Or else they really don't want Trump getting any credit for this. But here's the thing about this. If you're going to go out, now follow me on this, folks. Do not knee-jerk me on this. Listen to me. If you, candidate A, B, if you're Trump, if you're Cruz, I don't care who you are, and if part of your strategy is to go out and attract Democrat voters to join your Republican base, you can't get them by sounding like a Republican. If you sound like a Republican, they're not going to move and join you, right? This is what we have always objected to the Republican. We've always viewed the Republican establishment as watering itself down, the Republican Party as diluting itself and abandoning its principles in its quest for amnesty and other policy misadventures designed to attract Democrat voters. If you're going to go get Democrat voters, you have to speak their language. And you have to do it in a credible way. You have to make them think that you get them. And Trump's doing that. I have no doubt that's why Trump is harping on Planned Parenthood. I have no doubt that's why Trump is harping on. This is what, folks, if the Republican Party were to do, this is what they would have to do to get these voters. The Republican Party is not going to get a bunch of Hispanics by standing for amnesty alone. We already have seen that proven. The Republican Party, if they want to expand their base, if they're being honest with us, they're going, and they want liberal Democrats to abandon the Democrat Party, and they're not going to do that by espousing conservatism. Not right now. Conservatism is not what's going to appeal to these people. These people are disaffected Democrats. They're mad at the establishment for their own reasons, a la the Bernie Sanders phenomena. Plus, on the Democrat side, there's just a bunch of people that don't like Hillary to boot. But my point is that these Republicans are upset the way Trump is attacking George W. Bush. He's attacking Planned Parenthood or defending Planned Parenthood. I'm asking myself, well, how is she going to get them? You know, Republicans, you've got to make up your mind. You want to be a Republican conservative party. You want to expand the party on the basis of conservative principles and get somebody in there that knows how to do it. If you don't have anybody, if you're not conservative, if you don't believe conservatism, if you can't sell it because you don't believe it, if you can't articulate it, if you're not happy about it, you're never going to expand the party the right way. You're going to have to do it the way Trump is. So why get mad at what Trump's doing when he's doing exactly what you've always claimed you need to win? Well, I don't like that he's attacking Bush, and I don't like that he's defending Planned. Well, I'm sorry, but if that's what, if you want people to cross over and vote for you now and in the general in November, I thought this is what crossing the aisle meant. I think Trump's defining it, isn't he? Crossing the aisle, showing he can work with the other side, showing he can engage in compromise. This is what it looks like, folks. This is what it looks like. You know, all of you, I see the clock. All of you linguini-spined moderate Republicans who buy into this, we got to cross the aisle, we got to show the other side we can work with them and make Washington work. And you don't like Trump? Well, Trump is doing exactly what you say you support doing, and you don't like it? No wonder you're confused. Welcome back. El Rushbo on the cutting edge of societal evolution. So, to sum up, Trump is assembling a coalition beyond Republicans. A coalition the Republican Party has been saying for years it needs. They've been telling us, we got to back off, be patient, understand, they got to branch out. That's why they got to go for amnesty and all that. Trump's doing it. I saw somewhere where maybe as much as 20% of Trump's support is coming from white working class Democrats, independents, moderates, and so forth. Exactly what the Republican Party says they need. But they're not happy. They don't want it if Trump's delivery. But for those of you who think that the Republican Party is right, and you talk about crossing the aisle and think that's a great thing, compromise, get things done, well, this is what it looks like. Crossing the aisle does not mean trying to persuade white working class Democrats of conservatism, which is what Reagan did. This is not reaching across the aisle and converting. This is reaching across the aisle and pandering, is what the Republican Party is talking about. That's why so many of its supporters are fit to be tied. Also, folks, a super secret meeting that has leaked of powerful people designed to stop Trump coming up. Yeah. No, I didn't say I heard about it, and I'm going to get to it. No, there was I guess there was a segment on CNN over the weekend, and a guy named Bret Stephens from the Wall Street Journal was on blaming me for the fact that Trump exists. Blaming me for not taking Trump out. Now, I have a question to ask based on them. And then look at, is the Wall Street Journal really want to admit that it is powerless to influence thinking in this country? The Wall Street Journal's been open borders. The Wall Street Journal editorial page has been pro-amnesty for as long as the subject has been around. They are anti-Trump, and they have said so. Why isn't that enough? How come it always comes down to me? I thought the Wall Street Journal was an opinion newspaper. The editorial page had all kinds of power, lots of influence, big money. People read that. But isn't it fascinating that what the Journal is doing itself somehow is not enough to stop Trump? That if I don't do it, it won't be done. It's kind of, it's an interesting admission. At any rate, more on that, and there's lots of stuff like that yet to come here, folks. We've got news from the weekend to get to and stuff that happened yesterday to get to. Now, for those of you that are aware of what Romney has done, you know, Romney with his speech trying to convince Trump voters they're making a mistake and to abandon Trump. And everybody knows, including Romney, that isn't going to work. All that's going to do is solidify Trump's support. So the question, well, why do it? And the why do it is to set up circumstances where there might be an open convention, and then Romney can set himself up as the fusion candidate to save the day and to end the chaos. I can imagine Romney wants another go. I can imagine Romney's looking back at the 2012 campaign and is aware of the mistakes that he made, and that if he hadn't made them, he might be in the Oval Office today. So I can understand wanting another shot at it. And I can understand trying to massage and maneuver things so that you have a shot at it, even though you haven't participated in the primaries. You haven't been in the arena in this campaign. And well, we will talk about that, too, as the program unfolds. But it's not just Romney. Folks, there's a place in Georgia called Sea Island. There's been a G7 economic meeting there. It's a very ritzy and Tony place. It was originally built as a golf course development for well-to-do upper-crust people. Nothing wrong with that. The first edition of it didn't make it. It went close to bankrupt, and it had some emergency buyers. 3 partners, I believe, came in, total of $212 million, and rebuilt it, and now it's really something. It's off the coast of Georgia, and you have to be going there to get there. And it's a 5-star place. Well, it hosted a what was to have been private confab recently. A secret meeting sponsored by a think tank in Washington known as AEI, the American Enterprise Institute. Now, AEI has a think tank. They're people that sit there and think. And it's got leftist thinkers, and it's got centrist thinkers, and it's got some right-wing thinkers. Its chairman is someone who, Arthur Burns, has been recently trying to redefine what conservatism is, much the same way the Republican establishment has been trying to redefine conservatism. It's not what you and I consider it to be. Anyway, they have an annual meeting called a World Forum, World Economic Forum. It's the World Forum, AEI's World Forum. It's kind of like their own version of Davos, the World Economic Forum. At this one, described unimaginatively but accurately as opulent, Sea Island, Georgia hosted a gaggle of Republican leaders and tech CEOs for their annual World Forum of the American Enterprise Institute. Billionaires, tech CEOs, top members of the Republican establishment flew to a private island resort off the coast of Georgia this past weekend. The main topic at the close to the media meeting was how to stop Donald Trump. Some of the powerful people in attendance: Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple; Larry Page, CEO co-founder Google; Napster creator and Facebook investor Sean Parker; Tesla Motors and SpaceX honcho Elon Musk; and other tech bigwigs were there. In addition, Senator Mitch McConnell, political guru Karl Rove, House Speaker Paul Ryan, Republican Senators Tom Cotton, Cory Gardner, Tim Scott, Republican Congressman Bob Portman, Ohio, and Ben Sasse, Nebraska, were all in attendance. The main topic again, how to stop the Republican frontrunner, Donald Trump. A highlight of the gathering was a presentation by Karl Rove about focus group findings on Trump. According to Karl Rove, Trump's biggest weakness was that voters have a very hard time envisioning him as presidential and as somebody their children should look up to. Rove has done extensive focus group data, research and polling data, and has put together this profile of Trump. And he shared the data and the results with the high-tech CEOs and the political bigwigs. There were no media at this thing, no media CEOs, no media reporters, no big-time anchors. I mean, you know, when Allen and Company does their thing out at Sun Valley, they always have at least Tom Brokaw and Charlie Rose there. But they didn't even make the cut for this thing. And Rove's presentation zeroed in on the fact that even people that like Trump don't consider him presidential or somebody that their children should look up to. Sources familiar, and the meeting, by the way, has now been widely reported, but the news of the meeting was broken on the Huffing and Puffington Post. They were the first to report it. Sources familiar with the meeting, who requested anonymity because the forum is off the record, said that much of the conversation around Trump centered on how this happened, rather than how are we going to stop him. In other words, it was a circle, and they were sitting around the circle, and they were all telling each other or asking each other, how the hell did this happen? And it's an understandable thing. They think they run the world. They think they control these things. And out of the blue comes the Trumpster. And so they were in this circle trying to explain to each other how it happened. And then they did eventually get into what they can do to stop Donald Trump. Oh, I take it back. Pardon me for a moment. I did make an error. There was indeed a media person there. I forgot. It was Bill Kristol of the Weekly Standard. A specter was haunting the World Forum, the specter of Donald Trump, Bill Kristol wrote in an emailed report from the conference, borrowing the opening lines of the Communist Manifesto. There was much unhappiness about Trump's emergence, a good deal of talk, some of it insightful and thoughtful, about why Trump has done so well, and many expressions of hope that he would be defeated. The key task now, wrote Kristol, to once again paraphrase Karl Marx, is less to understand Trump than to stop him. In general, there's a little too much hand-wringing, brow-furrowing, and fatalism out there. Not quite enough resolving to save the party from nominating or the country electing someone who simply should not be president, according to the people at this super secret meeting. They have decided Trump should not be president. They met to explain to each other how it happened first, and then to share with each other ideas on how to stop Trump. Now, clearly, given the names that you would think the largest percentage here would have been Republicans, but when you look at the Google guys and the Apple CEO and Sean Parker, I mean, and the Google, there's all kinds of leftists at this thing, too. I guess they know how to cross the aisle that the Republican establishment knew how to bring the tech guys in. Clearly, the tech guys were there to offer some tech suggestions on stopping Trump. And again, a highlight of the gathering was a presentation by Karl Rove about focus group findings on Trump greatest weakness, doesn't look presidential. It's not somebody their children should look up to. They also see him. Rove's research on Trump supporters says they also see Trump as somebody who can be erratic and should not have his fingers anywhere near the nuclear trigger. This sounds exactly what these people said about Ronald Reagan. It's uncanny. The same kind of people, not these same people, obviously, same kind of people with the same exact kind of thing. We don't want to be anywhere near, have Reagan anywhere near the nuclear button. By the way, back to Romney for a second before I go to the break. Another point that I made on the Fox News Sunday program. Romney's father, George Romney, did this identical thing to Barry Goldwater in 1964. George Romney was part of a cabal of Republican establishment types, appalled at conservatism, scared to death, angry, afraid to death of Goldwater. They just could not stand that he was going to be the nominee. And George Romney went out in the campaign and did as much as he could to undermine the Goldwater campaign. Now, the mistake here, those people back then thought that they were doing and did do a great thing when they undermined. And they did undermine the Goldwater campaign. Well, Goldwater was not going to win. Nobody was going to beat LBJ coming off the JFK assassination. But they did undermine Goldwater. And in their view, in their short-minded view, they succeeded. They stopped conservatism in its tracks. But they forgot that Reagan gave that great speech, A Time for Choosing, and it was the Goldwater emergence and, defeat that created the modern-day conservative political movement. There was a conservative ideological movement that had been begun by William F. Buckley, but now it became a political and electable movement begun with Goldwater's loss, but signaled and heralded by Reagan's speech. And had not there been a Goldwater, there would not have been a Reagan in 1980 or 1976. But these guys, Mitt Romney, George, they're out there telling themselves what successful thing they did back in 1964. That remains their frame of reference for conservatism. Conservative candidate, conservative nominee equals landslide loss. They don't see two-state landslide, 49-state landslide victory twice by Reagan. They were opposed to conservatism in 1964. They were opposed to an outsider trying to get in their establishment tent in 1964. And the son of George Romney, Mitt Romney, tries the same thing last week to keep a new outsider from getting inside the establishment tent. And now this super secret meeting. I think news of this meeting, depending on how widespread it gets, could actually affect voting today. Because this is the kind of stuff, if people are wavering away from Trump for whatever it is, hearing this could send them right back in a lickety-split second if they find out about it. I'll tell you what the Huffington Puffington Post did. They went to the FAA and they tracked, you can track the various apps and websites, incoming and outgoing traffic at airports. And they tracked FAA records available at FlightAware.com, which is a great app tracking your airline flight, mapping it out where it is. And so anyway, a fleet of private jets flew into and out of two small airports near Sea Island, Georgia this week. And 54 planes flew out of the airport on Sunday. Nearly 4 times as many departed from the airport the previous Sunday. And they knew where they went to San Jose, California. They went to the state of Washington. They went to New York. They knew where they went. It's how they confirmed who was there at this meeting. Here's Kent in Chicago. Kent, you're up first today as we go to the phones, and it's great to have you here, sir. Hello.
Hey, Rush. Great honor. 25 probably year listener, and always a pleasure when I get an opportunity to talk to you. I'm a Reagan conservative voter. I voted for Reagan in the second election. As a child, Jimmy Carter horrified me. And all of my friends, everybody I know, is a conservative Republican. And the thing that I'm absolutely astounded by, I just got through listening to Bobby Jindal talk to Bill O'Reilly, and he couldn't even grasp the concept of if Donald Trump gets the nomination. these, people that talk about all these establishment, quote unquote, talking heads, talk about conservatism in an idealistic way. It's not in a real world way about having somebody, be there. Like, you understand conservatives like I do, like all of my friends do. If we lose this election rush, this country is gone forever. This is our last greatest hope to try to get this country back. And the people that have an idealistic view on what conservatism should be, not what it actually will be, and what it will be is whatever it is. It's not what we want it to be. You got to take what you get when you get it.
Okay, I'm confused. What was the point about Jindal and O'Reilly?
Bill O'Reilly asked Bobby Jindal if Donald Trump was a nominee, and Bobby Jindal basically ignored it and started talking about Ted Cruz, and Bill O'Reilly kind of got him back on point and said, listen, we're talking about the real world. If he is a nominee, and Bobby Jindal, in the end, accepted the premise and said, I'd vote for him. But the problem is that all of these establishment people don't even want to accept the concept of Donald Trump getting the nomination. They can't.
Okay. I'm out of time here. I'm going to have to try to figure out what you're asking me, which I will do, and I'll comment on it the next chance I've got here, the next couple of minutes. So, if I had more time, I could grill down deeper with you here and find. I know I got to hit the break here. I'll tell you something else about this super secret American Enterprise Institute forum at Sea Island, Georgia. You've got all these tech CEOs and all these left-wing inventors and tech people with these Republicans. What's going? That's crony capitalism right in front of your face. Or crony socialism, maybe, whatever. More detail coming up. Greetings, my good friends, and welcome back. Rush Limbaugh here on the cutting edge of societal and political evolution, meaning if you're here every day, you're going to be a step ahead of what happens and falls out on a day-to-day basis. It's great to have you here. The telephone number is 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbo@eibnet.com. Why is Donald Trump causing what he's causing? Why is there so much rabid interest in Donald Trump? We all know the answer to that. He's perceived as anti-establishment. He's perceived somebody as an outsider that is just going to represent the interests of people who have been lied to, ignored, whose life circumstances have been made worse by people in the establishment running as much as they can run. And, folks, there isn't any question about that. We're really down to it here when in describing the divide that exists between the ruling class. I don't care what term you come up for, the elites, the establishment, the ruling class. They consider themselves to be our betters. They do think of themselves a cut above us in education and training and breeding. And I'm not kidding about that. Breeding. Better families, better bloodlines, Ivy League or similar education. They do consider themselves better and as such, smarter. Much more competent. We, who are not permitted in that club, are rubes. Might not be an active dislike, it's just there's a contempt. We just don't know what they do, and we can't learn what they've learned, and we simply will not make the choices that must be made as they view it. So more and more control is sought over daily American life. But look what they've done, these betters. They have, under the guise of fixing things that have gone wrong, fixing things they broke in the first place. We're $19 trillion in debt with them in charge. We have one after another failing entitlement program, starting with Social Security, then Medicare, then Medicaid, then Obamacare. I think, however, it's a much more powerful thing to point out what they have done to the college education than to continue to harp on welfare, because that's almost become cliched and can easily be misconstrued into an attack on the poor, which we do not do. And by we, I mean all of us, people in this audience, fellow Americans I know, nobody makes fun of or wishes the poor on the poor. It's nothing like that at all. But here's the point. In America, there has always been this reality. It wasn't just a concept. It was a reality that whatever class differences existed were not exclusionary. You could be born poor and end up in the top 1%. Not everybody, but you could. You could be born in the fourth quintile. You could be born in the lower middle class, and work your way up. Now, since the Great Depression, the number one requirement to pulling something like that off has been a college education. This is what we've been told, and for the most part, it really can't be denied. It's become, and it has always been, a major requirement. Whether it's actually used to limit the number of applicants that have to be interviewed or whatever, the importance of a college degree cannot be denied in terms of advancement. For those who didn't go to college, there were vocational schools where people could earn a living, being construction workers or mechanics or manufacturing line workers or whatever. But in any case, there was a way up. That's what, you want to boil it down, the American dream was not just owning a house. It was the opportunity to improve yourself. Unlike anywhere else in the world, whatever you're born to, that's your life. But not here. But look at what our betters have done. Under the guise of being smarter and brighter, they have botched everything. They've screwed up the healthcare system now. They have turned the greatest healthcare system in the world into something that is inaccessible for a large number of people. They run the banks, right? What are interest rates? 0%. What's that cost the banks? Nothing. Well, how does it help you? For all this longest time, these people have been the ones telling us to save our money. Been chiding us if we don't. Publicly chiding us for not saving for a rainy day, right? News stories predictable once, twice, 3 times a year. These people wringing their hands over the fact that the saving rate is too low. It's going to put additional pressure on entitlements when people retire. No matter what we do, we're screwing up. We're eating the wrong things. We're drinking the wrong things and too much of the wrong things. So all of these things have to be controlled on the premise that we don't know what we're doing. They know what they're doing. Well, this one ticket out for everybody, as it was portrayed and as it has been sold and explained to people, the college education, look at what they've done to that. Oh, yeah, it's still available. It costs an arm and a leg. But it has become an impediment to climbing the ladder of success. The debt that the vast majority of college graduates incur acquiring their degrees makes it impossible to do anything but stay even for a while. Got to pay back the loans. And many people have student loan debt that's in 6 figures. But it doesn't take a 6-figure student loan debt to make it cumbersome and to make it an impediment. And to actually act like a ball and chain in slowing you down. And yet that's the big ticket out. That's what they've sold it. Everybody's bought it. Everybody's believed it. Everybody has signed on to it. It has become a cultural given. You nothing if you don't go to college. Well, you just don't have anywhere near the chance if you don't go to college. So they've sold that. Who runs colleges and universities? They do. Whenever there is talk of consumers being ripped off with rising costs, how come universities never are mentioned? Big oil's always targeted. Big pharmaceuticals always targeted. Big box retailer is always targeted. Big auto is always targeted. But big school isn't. No, we'll handle the big school expenses. We'll loan you the money. My point is, forget conspiracies. They've just botched it, folks. They have not fixed any. They've made it actually tougher to climb the ladder of success. These are the people in charge of all these things. These are the people. These are the people that have always said they know better. Trump has been coming. It's been in the cards for years. We didn't know who it was going to be, but this was going to happen. At some point, there was going to be a revolt against this because after enough time passes, enough people have been demonstrably negatively impacted by all this to keep it a secret. They're going to figure it out, which they have. It doesn't hurt that the Republican Party came along in the last two midterm elections and promised to stop all this and turn the ship around, start sailing in the right direction. Didn't happen. Voters believed them, invested in it. The evidence isn't theoretical. It's real. Where does all this lead? Here's the danger. You see, the danger is that the betters, the elites, the ruling class, whatever you're going to call them, the establishment, everything they have done has been designed to affect a number of things, but among them, public opinion. They have made it look like they are aware we are in a democracy, that people vote and winners triumph and implement what they believe. And yet all the time this is going on, the ruling class and establishment has been setting itself up to survive and thrive no matter who wins elections. And at some point down the road, this is what always happens. The ruling class is, why are we even go through this charade of elections? Why are we even wasting our time? And this is how democracies end. This is how republics fall by the wayside. The ruling class finally tires of going through the motions of pretending public opinion matters, winning public opinion matters. They get tired of it and they realize it's a wasted exercise. It's necessary in order to get the power and keep the power for a while. But after a while, you don't even need the elections because no matter what happens in elections, you still run the show and still do what you want to do. And that's why there's Trump. Somebody has come along and has convinced a lot of people here that he's the agent of change that can stop all of this. It's quite natural that the establishment would not want any part of this. It's quite natural that the people who have considered themselves our betters by virtue of breeding and intelligence and education and position, they're not just going to sit by and let an election take it all away from them. For those of you who play golf, let me give you an analogy. Let's say you live in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and you are a member of the Oshkosh Country Club, and you have people who've wanted to become members at Augusta National for 50 years, but Augusta National won't give you the time of day. And you finally said, you know what? We're just going to take over. We're just going to move there, and we're just going to take over. Do you think the members at Augusta National are just going to sit there and let Oshkosh Country Club take over? No way. It's not how it happens. So now, clearly, they are organizing to try to stop Trump. Now, they're doing it within the confines of the electoral process, which means they still consider that to be relevant. But if they have to, they will act outside the electoral process to stop Trump. By denying the electoral, by taking over the convention and making sure that whatever the expressed will of voters is not reflected when the convention is over. That's what I mean by outside the political system. And make no mistake that this is being planned right now. Now, a couple of things that you might think are not related, but they are. A story here from Breitbart News. Facebook suspends Frack Nation page for telling the truth about fracking. There's a fracking trial going on in Pennsylvania. It's not going well for the left. They're losing it. Facebook has shut down the page. of pro-frackers. I am not kidding. By the way, little side note, Hillary Clinton, she may have stepped in it last night and nobody knows it yet. In that little thing they did with Fox News, Hillary Clinton came out against fracking in Ohio. And what, Pennsylvania? 2 states the Democrats need? I mean, it's one thing to be against coal in these southern hick states, but you know the Democrats really never came after coal in Pennsylvania and Ohio. Hillary, whether she knew what she did or came out against fracking, fracking is why Ohio has a booming economy. And here's Hillary Clinton telling them she's going to shut it down. Believe me, it's going to come back and bite her. And the same thing in Michigan here, folks. Same thing in Pennsylvania, whatever. She's out there. But my point about the social media is this. Let's go back to this secret confab that took place at Sea Island, Georgia, over the weekend. You had all kinds of tech CEOs from Silicon Valley. Tim Cook from Apple, Larry Page, Google, Sean Parker, Napster, and Facebook. You had Elon Musk of Tesla and SpaceX. You had Mitch McConnell. You had Karl Rove. You had Paul Ryan. You had numerous Republican senators and congressmen. You know who wasn't there? The drive-bys. Now, wait. Other than Bill Kristol, there were no media people there. Don't laugh. What this means is, if the tech people are there, Facebook, Google, if they're there, what that tells me is that social media is usurping the role of traditional drive-by media. And take a look at this story in Breitbart about Facebook simply suspending a pro-fracking page based on what's happening in Pennsylvania in fracking. Fracking, there's a trial against it, and it's not going well for the left, for the Hillary, the Democrats, the people who oppose fracking under the climate change. They just don't want any oil at all. It's got to be totally solar, renewable, wind, what have you. Anything that makes oil, fossil fuels cheaper and more plentiful, they oppose it. Fracking does that. The anti-fracking forces are losing. Facebook has shut down the pro-fracking page. In other words, don't even need the media to do stories anti-fracking, because the actions on social media now just shut down access, just shut down free speech on social media of the people you don't like. And in this case, the pro-fracking people have been silenced and shut down and shut up on Facebook. And they're working hand in hand with the Democrat Party on anti-fracking, and they don't need one drive-by reporter there to accomplish this. They're not even worried about the media shutting down public opinion or shaping it or what. They're using social media to silence it. So don't think that wasn't on this agenda of this super secret thing that happened at Sea Island, Georgia this past weekend. And this, I think, is a great indication of how they might end up using social media to harm, damage, what have you, Trump, and then Cruz. If they succeed in taking Trump out, then they're going to focus on Cruz until they get the the lackey that they want in there. No doubt that's their objective, in my humble opinion. One minor but important correction on the super secret confab at Sea Island, Georgia. I said there were no drive-bys there, and there were. Arthur Schultzberger III, Little Pinch, who runs the New York Times, was there. None of his reporters, but he was there. With all, and of course, Little Pinch, the New York Times, folks, is part of the establishment, obviously, and Bill Kristol from the Weekly Standard. Back to the phones we go. Mark in Port St. Lucie, Florida. Great to have you, sir. Hello.
Hello, Rush. Like you, I read the Wall Street Journal almost every day. And for the last 5 months, I know you've seen that they've been hammering Trump with 2 to 4 articles a day.
Yeah.
I don't think they realize that this is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Can you imagine what a brokered convention with the passion of Trump representatives would look like? It's going to make the debates look tame.
Well, we need to get into that, because even if they succeed in denying Trump 1,237, if the primaries work out, let's say Cruz continues to gain ground, and I don't know, Kasich, what happens if Kasich wins Ohio? There's a whole lot of stuff here yet to be decided. The bottom line, if Trump goes into Cleveland with, say, 1,100 delegates, not 1,237, it looks like right now that the Republican Party is going to use that as an opportunity to blow up this whole thing and use it to get rid of Trump and choose somebody else on the second, third, whatever, how many ballots it takes. In which case, you've got not just Trump delegates that show up in Ohio. You've got Trump voters all over this country in an explosion of outrage. If they try, let's say Trump gets within 50 delegates or 100, and nobody else is close, and if they try to yank it away and don't acknowledge the will of the people, that's what they will be flouting. They will be flouting the will of Republican primary voters if they try that. There's going to be chaos, and they may want the chaos. But there's another factor in this, too, that I don't have time to get into now. I'll do before the program ends, I promise. But this Wall Street Journal observation you had, too, you're right about that. And they have not been able to stop Trump. So now they're out there on TV saying it's my fault Trump hasn't been stopped. Okay, folks, I just learned that the pro-fracking page has been put back up at Facebook. So the Facebook attempted censorship of pro-fracking forces failed. And both sides of the fracking discussion regarding a trial going on in Pennsylvania are now back up. The story I have on this is from Breitbart, and it's from, admittedly, it's from last night. Facebook suspends Frack Nation page for telling the truth about fracking. There's a fracking trial, and the left is losing it. And Facebook shut down the pro-fracking pages for comment and what have you, whatever you do there at Facebook. But the forces overwhelmed Facebook censors, and it's back up now. So that's good. It's a microcosm of what's happening. In the old days, the people who had been shut down or shut out would just have to deal with it. They really wouldn't have any mechanism to overcome in this case, censorship. But they are so large in numbers. I actually should say we are so many now. Our numbers are so huge. I think it's the left that is the minority. I think it is establishment thinking, ruling class thinking that's the minority. That's another thing that's frustrating about it for a lot of people, is that we're actually being governed or ruled, if you will, by a minority of thought. So, but make no mistake, social media is being used by the left to censor anything they don't want to hear or see. Now, the fracking attempt was beat back, but it's happening throughout Twitter. And look at all these websites that are now prohibiting and eliminating comments. The LA Times, for example, has announced that, not that recent, it's past few months, the Los Angeles Times has announced that they are no longer going to permit letters to the editor or comments on their website from people anti-global warming. They're just not going to permit it. So the point here is that social media is overtaking the drive-by media in terms of where people who want to influence public opinion go. Now, don't misunderstand. I'm not saying the drive-bys are history. It's still in an evolutionary phase, and the social media aspect of it is relatively new. But I'm making the point because look who was at this meeting. You know, there was a similar meeting in 1957 at Sea Island, Georgia, and it was called the Kingmakers. That's what the group was called then. Same, it was the political and media and corporate elite of the day met for the same express purposes back in 1950s. Phyllis Schlafly writes about it in her biography or one of her books. And it has the same objective. It's always, but back then, it wasn't known to exist the way it's known to exist today. And back then, when the elites got together, everybody wanted to be there. It was oh wow, these are the real powerful people, and people trusted them. Obviously, some did. It's a massively changing landscape now, but we're in the middle of the landscape changing. So I don't want anybody to knee-jerk me here again on this and think I've said that the drive-bys are finished. They're not. It's just social media has developed and evolved into another quiver in the ammo bag, if you will. And censorship is the objective of the new left. They're not happy with me in Rio Linda. A little brief departure here until we get back to the news of the day. But I just found out, apparently in Rio Linda, which is, I learned of Rio Linda when I lived in Sacramento. I drove through it one day and I was... Anyway, they're not happy with me there, and I think they should love me. I have put Rio Linda on the map. I have no doubt been instrumental in elevating and raising property values and a nationwide awareness of the place. But I have here a report in KCRA TV3, the NBC affiliate in Sacramento, and it's from Thursday night, and they reported about folk art in Rio Linda. Apparently, they got a new project out there to make barn quilts. They're putting folk art barn quilts around town to combat stereotypes spread by me. So we go to the soundbite here. This is KCRA TV3 Sacramento. New American folk art. This is the anchor, Lisa Gonzalez. New American folk art is popping up all over Rio Linda. It's called Barn Quilts, courtesy of a group of women in town. And this is the report.
As KCRA3's Leticia Ordaz reports, the brightly painted blocks on barns, homes, businesses, and landmarks are helping to erase stereotypes and spread community pride.
Deborah Crow is the brainchild behind the Rio Linda, Alberta Quilt Trail project. Instead of fabric, wood or metal is used as a canvas that represents important things in the community. Deborah thought it would be a powerful way to change Rio Linda's image.
Rush Limbaugh says some nasty things about our town, and it's not true.
It wasn't hard to recruit women to join her group.
We were the housewives of Rio Linda.
They've already placed some 20 pieces of artwork all over town.
When you go and drive down the street, you're looking for the barn quilts. You don't notice a lot of trash on the street or graffiti or anything like that.
Well, did you catch all of that? Yeah. What's the question? What's the question? They're making barn quilts to distract people from the trash and graffiti that they would otherwise see as they drive through town. Look, it's still there. This is 28 years ago. I offered to move to Rio Linda when I lived there if they would change the name to Limbaugh, California. They turned that down. I also offered to move to West Sacramento if they would change. They turned it down. But I mean, when I drove through Rio Linda, I was stunned. There's no number on the population sign, on the city limit sign, so nobody admits living there. And I drove the main drag of town, and then people's cars are up on concrete blocks, and the washing machines are on the front porch. And I went back to the radio station. What is this place? It was right near the Air Force Base. So what in the world is this place? That's Rio Linda. Everybody loves Rio Linda. So I made it my pet community and so forth. And did you hear this? She says Rush Limbaugh says some nasty things about our town and it's not true. And then later on, yeah, so now when you go drive down the street, you're looking for the barn quilts. You don't notice the trash on the street or the graffiti or anything now. I love Rio Linda. Where would this program be without it? I had heard, I'd been told for many, many moons that property values in Rio Linda had skyrocketed since I put the place on the map. So, yeah. I'm watching House of Cards. Folks, I realize a number of you it's season 4 now on Netflix. And it just hit Friday, so I'm sure very few of you have binge-watched the whole thing. There's 13 episodes. Some of you may not have even started yet, so I am not going to... I'm not even going to give you an indication of what I think about it, because that itself would be a spoiler alert. I'm tempted to, but I'm going to hold back. I'll give people a couple weeks to get into this, and then I will share my thoughts on this. One thing here before we get back to audio soundbites. Reuters: diplomats from Europe, the Middle East, Latin America, and Asia join forces to complain to U.S. officials about Donald Trump. Foreign diplomats expressing alarm to U.S. government officials about what they say are inflammatory and insulting public statements by Trump. Officials from Europe, the Middle East, Latin America, and Asia have complained in recent private conversations, mostly about the xenophobic nature of Trump. That's not what bugs it. Don't fall for that. You know, these powerful people, they couldn't care less that somebody might insult them and their race and their ethnicity. I mean, maybe a few here. This is not about, and these are the same elites in their countries and in their structures who are just worried that some outside force is going to come in here and upset the balance, and they're using as an excuse, this guy's racist, he's xenophobic. You know how to tell they're panicking? Is all of these people now comparing Trump to Hitler. And Trump rallies to the Nuremberg rallies. Yeah, that's our old buddy David Brooks of the New York Times. David Brooks of the New York Times actually, Trump has gone, one of his bits now, he started it, I think, maybe it was Saturday in Orlando. It might have been earlier. But at his rally in Orlando Saturday, he asked people to raise their hand, take a pledge to vote for him. And he kind of botched it because he gave them a pledge to recite that was too long. Every sentence was where he stopped and asked them to repeat was too long. So he revised the pledge now. But this just injected fear in the establishment class. David Brooks out there, oh my God, this is just what Hitler did. Oh my God, let's bring back the Nuremberg rallies, why don't we? And then there were pictures of the Nuremberg rallies, people lined up, posted next to a Trump rally in Orlando. Now, when they haul Hitler out at you, that tells us the degree to which they're panicked and how they're nearing their last stops to pull out here in trying to head this off. Let anybody call Obama a Muslim or a socialist or a Marxist, and these people jump down your throat and they tell you how uncivilized that is, how unsophisticated that, how embarrassing that is to say that of your, and here the same people running around trying to tell Trump supporters that he's nothing more than a modern incarnation of Adolf Hitler. If that's not exasperation and frustration, I don't know what it is. Now, back to the audio soundbite. Starting here at number 9. I mentioned this earlier. This is a panel on CNBC's Squawk Box. Joe Kernan, and they're talking with Becky Quick out there. And their guest is the Politico chief economic correspondent, Ben White. And they're frustrated trying to figure out where I am in all of this.
You saw, like, Limbaugh. He was talking about Ted Cruz, saying that this guy, it was like a treatise in constitutional conservative thinking. But then with Trump, he said that the upside for a Trump presidency far outweighs the downside that all of his critics are talking about.
He's been fairly supportive of Trump over the last couple of months.
But if you had...
He keeps saying this is not an endorsement when he says it, but he says some pretty positive things about it.
It's coming down to Cruz and Trump.
Yeah, that's the establishment's worst nightmare.
And Limbaugh will not pick one. Limbaugh will not get off either one of them. The establishment's worst nightmare. I gave the answer to this on Fox News Sunday. It isn't a mystery. They so desperately want me to endorse somebody so that they can go to town on that. but I never do endorse. It's not an unheard of thing here. This is not anything that's unprecedented. What I said on Fox News Sunday, because Chris Wallace, he asked me one question I was not anticipating. You know, you do these shows, and they give you, at least Chris does, he gives me the general topic areas. I don't want the specific questions, actually. I do some of my best thinking on the fly, rather than if I just sit down and brainstorm things I want to say. I've got so accustomed to working this way, that's when I do my best. So I just want general areas. He asked me one question that I did not even conceive as a possibility. It wasn't a trick. He asked me, how do you think this is going to end? And, of course, it's a good question because it calls for, if I fail to do this right, it calls for me to name somebody I think is going to win. So my brain went into such fast action I could barely keep up with myself. And I told Chris Wallace, when this thing is all over, we're going to have a nominee. Because this always happens, these heightened battles and the seemingly irresolvable arguments during a primary, and people say the party cannot possibly unify after this, and we always do. And I said, we're all going to realize at the end of this process at some point that the real objective is to stop the most destructive force in this country, and that's the Democrat Party and Hillary Clinton. And at the end of all this, that will be the objective. It must be the objective. And it is what I most care about. I'm not into endorsements to see what kind of power I have, see if the guy I endorse can win. I'm not interested in basking in the light of whoever's hot at the moment. My objective, and I've not hidden this, the Democrat Party has got to lose. We have got to beat them. We can't work with them. We can't cross the aisle. We can't do any of that. The Democrat Party has to be defeated. They are the most destructive force operating in this country today. They are single-handedly more responsible for the messes in this country than anybody else. And they've got to be defeated. Whoever can do that is going to have my vote. What about conservatism? Well, it goes hand in hand. If we don't have articulate good conservatism, we're not going to beat them. We can't beat them being Democrat light. We can't beat them crossing the aisle and meeting them halfway and showing them we mean them no harm. To me, the two go hand in hand. And by the way, that's not a unique position. I have always, in campaigns past, in years past, my objective has always been beat the Democrats. Not nominate my favorite guy. I can't control that anyway. And I don't endorse people because I don't control them, and I have no idea what they're going to do after I endorse them. And the last thing I'm going to do is endorse somebody who goes out off the rails, jumps off the cliff, some oddball thing that people call here demand I defend, and I can't. The primary is a losing cause doing that. You know, talk to anybody who has and get them to be honest with you, and they'll tell you that they'd rather have it back. Anyway, Wall Street Journal blaming me. That's coming up next. When we get back, don't go away, folks. Colin Powell, Colonel Colin Powell, Secretary Colin Powell. So he was in Africa. What was he doing in Africa? He was in Africa. He was in Africa. He said they're scratching their heads in Africa. They can't figure out what's going on in the Republican campaign. Not in America. Not in Africa. Secretary Powell says they can't figure out what's happening in the Republican campaign. Well, I mean, that may be the straw that breaks the camel's back right there, right? That might mean we have to change it. By the way, an acknowledgement that you on the phones have been holding for a while, and I get it. I appreciate it. I'm sorry. There's just so much here. I'm going to get the phones as soon as I can in this hour. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate all your patience. 800-282-2882. You want to be on the program? We're back here in the EIB network. El Rushbo executing assigned host duties flawlessly while meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. You know, there's something that Trump says, and every time he says it, I start shouting at the TV. He usually brings it up during debates. It happened in the last Fox debate when they had all these videos and slides that they showed candidates to try to, well, back then you said, well, whatever our slide here says, or listen to what you said here in this video versus what you said last week in our last debate. How do you square these two, candidate X or whatever? And the way that they went after Trump is out there saying he's going to get rid of all this excessive spending with eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, which doesn't cut it. I mean, this has been, every candidate under the sun's been promising to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. But what Trump cites is the elimination of certain agencies. In addition to Common Core, we're going to get rid of the Department of Education. And then he says we're going to close the EPA. And a couple other bureaucracies are just going to shut them down. So the Fox moderators had a bunch of slides prepared to show how little money we're talking about in terms of a $19 trillion national debt or a $400 billion deficit. And I think they showed $8 billion would be saved if you cut the EPA, if you eliminate the EPA. And I'm watching it, and I get frustrated. $8 billion, that doesn't get anywhere near describing the damage the agency does. The answer to the question, and by the way, it's an important point, which is why I'm bringing it up. I'm all for getting rid of the EPA. I think the EPA has been totally taken over by a bunch of leftist, unelected bureaucrats who are issuing punitive regulations, and they are implementing a radical leftist agenda without Congress being involved. And they're doing it under the rubric, if you will, of man-made global warming that is happening. And so all their regulations end up being punishments for anybody in the fossil fuel industry or your average citizen who lives somewhere who might be going about his life in a way they disapprove of. And the point is this. It's not the money you save by eliminating the agency that you have to calculate. You have to calculate the damage to the economy done by these agencies. All of these punitive regulations. Look at how much money it costs now, and time, and legal fees, and whoever knows whatever else is involved in an environmental impact study to build a freaking outhouse. The environmental impact study can eliminate, can prevent a house being built, a development being built, an office building, or a factory being built. If the EPA had been in charge, and if we had had OSHA, we might not have been able to build a Golden Gate Bridge. It was too dangerous, and it was exploitative. It used workers during the Depression and didn't pay them much. The same thing with the Bay Bridge, the Hoover Dam. And yet, you look at what happened. We built the Golden Gate Bridge in 4 years. At the same time, we built the Bay Bridge in San Francisco, connecting to Oakland and Berkeley, and the Hoover Dam, all in the same decade. During the Great Depression, we couldn't come anywhere close. How many years was there a hole in the ground at 9/11's ground zero? And look at the hoops people had to jump through in order to get the Freedom Tower built. We had to build monuments to every frigging multicultural group that's ever put foot on this soil. We had to make sure that people who had been victims of something or other were recognized with a plaque or what have you. How much money do you think it cost this economy? How much money do you think it cost the economy, the American people, just in these EPA regulations? How much do you think the price of a car is impacted by the EPA? Now, I can hear some of you, what are you against clean air? No, I'm not against clean air, but let's face it. We've cleaned up ourselves, cleaned up after our messes on our own much better and thoroughly with all these regulations coming down the pike. But I know people who bow down and treat government as God and government as religion, who think nothing good would ever happen without government. And, that, by the way, pretty much identifies these Republican establishment types who believe in a active, energetic executive. That's actually how they call it. That's actually the words they use to describe an activist president. Yes, we need an energetic executive managing a large government the American people have clearly stated they want in a responsible and efficient way. Translation, we believe in big government now because we're in charge of it, we benefit from it, so shut up about small government. But limited government equals freedom. Limited government equals liberty. Limited government equals enhanced economic opportunity for people. So when this subject comes up, anytime, you can't let them get away with just talking about the EPA only being an $8 billion agency. And you want some poof from the Daily Signal. As Michigan voters head to polls today, they should ask candidates whether they will leave in place costly regulations that have added thousands of dollars to the price of new cars and depressed sales for Michigan's auto industry. The fuel economy regulations alone in an automobile made in 2016 are nearly $4,000. And that's just the EPA regulations that require certain aspects in the manufacture of a car. There are all kinds of other agencies that have their fingers in this pile, too. The cost of a home, the cost of a car, the cost of building anything is way more than it would be without these redundant, punitive, unrealistic, and unnecessary regulations. No, I'm not advocating an unregulated, don't even, that's what they always do. Oh, so you're for unfettered capitalism. No. I'm just saying markets work. Just let them work and they will work. By definition, markets work. Charlatans are discovered and they go broke. Yeah, but what about the damage they do in the process? Yeah, okay. Try to micromanage every crook. Try to micromanage every time somebody gets taken advantage of. And all you end up with is people investing more and more control over their lives and a bunch of people in government who couldn't do what they're regulating if their lives depended on it. And that's another thing about it that bugs me. How many of them could build an iPhone? How many of them could design one? Or a car? Or a rocket? Or whatever else it is they're regulating. That's the answer to it. It's same thing with the Department of Education. In fact, even worse. Forget Common Core. Look at the dilapidated state of public education, and you tell me it has no impact on what people are able to do with their lives. If you put garbage in, you're going to put garbage out, and you're going to graduate. How in the world can you graduate and not be able to read your diploma? How in the world can that happen? But it does. Well, what's that person prepared to do? What's the cost of the economy of graduating somebody who can't read? What is the cost of the economy of graduating a whole bunch of people who can't read and who do not know because they have not been taught the bare essentials of their own country? You start calculating costs like that, and the actual cost of maintaining these agencies is dwarfed by the economic damage they cause. That, to me, has always been, and it's not just Trump. Nobody comes back at it from this angle. Now to the audio sound bites, and when this happened, I got a couple of emails. And I never turn on the TV when this is, got a couple of, hey, they're getting ready to savage you on CNN. Fareed Zakaria GPS. Don't worry. I'm fine. I don't care. Sunday morning, Fareed Zakaria GPS speaking Wall Street Journal columnist Bret Stephens about the presidential primary race, Republican side. Fareed Zakaria's GPS said, Bret, you wrote a very powerful political column this week in which you said that this is now, the Republican presidential campaign is kind of conservative gutter. The conservative gutter. The question is, who is to blame, Bret, for the conservative gutter and how did it happen?
I put the sort of immediate blame on the failure of people like Rush Limbaugh to call out Trump. A lot of people in the conservative media who sort of made a guy whose politics aren't really aligned with much of the Republican Party or the conservative movement, make him seem like a respectable, plausible presidential candidate, when I wish back in the summer, when he was sort of a soap bubble, that they might have popped him.
All right, now, I could react to this one of two ways. I could be flattered. Hey, they think I could have stopped the guy. Hey, they think I should have stopped the guy. Hey, they wish I would have stopped the guy. But I come back at this with, well, why haven't you been able to? I mean, the Journal has been editorializing against Trump at least twice a week. That's just the editorial page, and they've had op-eds, news stories. I thought talk radio was just this little entertaining thing over here. It wasn't anything to take seriously. Is it my job to take candidates out? If they want a candidate taken out, why is it my job to do what they want? Well, now I know what he's saying. No, if I'm true to myself, if I'm being honest about who I am, Trump should repel me, and as such, I should do everything I can to get rid of Trump and harm Trump and so forth. And, this is a difference. I don't think that my audience is a bunch of brain-dead robot sponges. I don't think there's a single one of you out there for Trump that I could talk out of it. The only person that can separate you from Trump is Trump. I mean, nobody else made the connection. You're not glomming onto Trump because somebody's telling you how great he is. You're not supporting Trump because somebody's told you you've decided on your own. You like what Trump's doing, you like what he's saying, and you're willing to give it a chance because everything else you've tried the last 25 years hasn't worked out. Why not try an outsider? Why not go, I know how the drill goes. But this is why I don't endorse. Well, you take out Hillary. Be careful. All I've done is try to point out that the nominee over there is not going to be Bernie Sanders. Although, I'm not going to have time to get into it today, but what's going on with this guy who set up her server and who has been granted immunity, there's more to that than I think we know. And I think my problem with the Hillary thing is I've been telling people, I came up on the golf course yesterday, hey, you think we're going to get Hillary this time? It never fails, folks. And I always say, well, how many times have we thought that since 1992? That we finally got him. That they've been exposed and this is it. And it's never happened, has it? So why is this year going to be any different? But Rush, this is the FBI. This is a justice. Yeah, exactly. It's the Justice Department. Who runs it? Barack Hussein O. I'll tell you what I tell him. I told a bunch of guys, we had a backlog at number 16 yesterday, par 3. So a bunch of people came up, what do I think's going to happen to Hillary? I'll tell you what I know has already happened. And that is Bill Clinton called Obama and said, let's go play a round of golf. And they did. And at some point during that round of golf, Bill Clinton puts his arm around Obama and says, okay, look, bud, let's hit this stir down, shall we? You think you got goods on it, right? Well, you think you're cleaning pure as the wind-driven snow, buddy? Let me tell you something. We got more on you. And if you unload on her, you think you're going to get away with it? How do you think I've survived as far as I have? How come I've gotten away with everything I've gotten away with? You cannot take her out without taking yourself down, pal. And don't you ever damn well forget it. Something like that has happened. Now, whether Obama's intimidated by it or not, we don't know. But I guarantee you. I can't guarantee you, but I mean. By the way, should I have repudiated McCain? Should I have repudiated Romney? Are they close to the ideals that I support in a candidate? Should I have repudiated them? That's an interesting question. Here's Jeffrey Lord. Jeffrey Lord on CNN was asked about what Brett Stevens at the Wall Street Journal had said on Anderson Cooper 360 last night.
It just strikes me, if the people in the establishment had been listening to Rush Limbaugh for the last X number of years, they would have seen this coming. But they don't see this coming because, they were too busy writing articles for Newsweek that David Frum wrote there, the former Bush aide, that enough and stop Rush Limbaugh and don't listen and all this sort of stuff. All they had to do was listen to Rush's show, listen to what his callers are saying to him, and they would have understood perfectly well, long before Donald Trump, that they had a real problem on their hands. But they didn't pay attention.
That's pretty right on the money. He's simply saying if these guys had listened to you, if they'd been paying attention, that Trump didn't happen in a vacuum, that it's been coming, and they should have known it. And instead they send people like Frum out there to write Newsweek cover pieces saying it's enough of Rush Limbaugh. We got to get rid of Rush Limbaugh. We got to stop listening to Rush Limbaugh. Just get rid of Limbaugh. Stop paying attention to him. Instead of listening to what's happening on his program. That was Jeffrey Lord's point. You got to say, it's pretty astute. The National Review devoted an entire issue to the attempt to take out Trump. And I think all it did was solidify his support. Anyway, St. Augustine, Florida. Brenda, thank you for waiting and welcome to the EIB Network. Hi.
Yeah, thanks, Rush. Just briefly, you've been really important in my life and my late husband's life, so thank you for what you do.
Thank you very much.
But now I'm going to have to disagree with you. Not totally, but I agree that the purpose way back when in the conversation is to defeat the Democrats. Assuming someone believes that Donald Trump can't do that or may only be a Democrat under the hood, Florida's kind of in a dilemma with who to choose. Now, the establishment people want us to pick Marco Rubio, and he is close to Trump. He's like 5 away. I personally would like to see Ted Cruz win, but, if I vote my conscience, I'd vote for Ted Cruz. But should someone who's anti-establishment be going against their orders and voting for their guy, or if...
Wait a minute. This is not hard, unless I'm missing something.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to stop Trump... Mm-hmm. Then it won't matter who you vote for. If you're for Cruz, vote for Cruz. He's actively campaigning this week in Florida, so...
But he may not win Florida, which means Trump will.
No. If any vote that Trump doesn't get, whether it goes for Rubio or Cruz, is still a vote that Trump doesn't get.
True, but...
By the way, I wouldn't believe that poll that shows Rubio 5 behind. That's only one poll that shows that. It's an ARG poll. It's kind of a strange sample. It's more a poll that might be designed to shape public opinion and reflect it. He could be that close. I don't think there's reason to believe he's gained that kind of ground. But
Cruz was quite far behind in that poll. So if I vote for Cruz and other people are following the establishment and voting for Rubio or following their conscience or whatever, and Rubio doesn't quite get to Trump, Cruz has a long way to go to get to Trump down here. Does that mean that there's the automatic thing that they talked about where, it sounds like if he gets Florida and Ohio, it's a shoo-in for
pretty
him.
much, because they're winner-take-all. So, yeah. It's an uphill battle. Mm-hmm. For any one person to stop Trump. The battle is to have a bunch of people get enough delegates to deny Trump the 1,237 going into the convention. I know you've got one more question. We'll hang on and get to it after the break here. Don't go away. Brenda, St. Augustine, let's go back to your issue. Here's what you really ought to do. If you believe the poll that shows Rubio's within 5, the only way to stop Trump is it's whoever wins Florida gets all the delegates. It's a winner take all. Mm. So that means if you think that poll's right, that Rubio's only 5 behind, then you got to vote Rubio.
Okay.
If you got to vote for whoever you think is going to beat Trump, because that's what it's going to take to deny Trump those delegates. If that's what your objective is, then you've got to vote for whoever you think has the best chance, including with your vote among those tallied, to defeat Trump.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I thought was about the.
And what bothers you about that is you're voting with the establishment.
Yes.
Well, but just this one time.
Right.
And that's not why you're doing it. Right?
No, not at all.
So you can have a free conscience on this one.
Okay. I was a liberal back in the day when I was growing up in New York.
See, I can understand why you still feel guilty.
And I never voted for a Democrat. So I finally figured out, after God got a hold of me and then you, that I was actually not a liberal. So I've always voted Republican, and obviously Rubio is a Republican, but the establishment is getting so Democrat that it's pretty hard to tell the difference.
It's not that the establishment is getting Democrat. The establishment is anti-anybody that wants to take what they've got, which is totally understandable. It's their turf. They ought to be defended. Look at, there ought not be any complaints. It's not fair. They are the establishment. They are the power. They're going to do whatever they can. This is ball game, folks. This is not beanbag here. It's not Civics 101 in your 7th grade history book. This is for keeps. And the people that own all the stuff, the people who have the ball, the people whose hands and departments control the money, they're not just going to sit there and let anybody come take it, no matter who they are. They're going to do what they can to defend it, including go far outside any acceptable boundary if they have to. That's what we're up against here. There is no fairness here. There is no, well, they can't do that. You got to be prepared for them to do anything, including try to destroy by reputation or career the people trying to take what they've got. You'd be no different if a horde in the neighborhood wanted to take your house away from you. Well, anyway, a horde, Hoarde. What do you think I said? Oh, no. You talk prostitute? No. Some people would welcome that, but most wouldn't. Here's Kathy in Scotts Valley, California. It's great to have you on the program. Hi.
Hey, Rush. Long time listener. I go back to about 89, and you did a lot to help me define my own core values. But on this parallel that you have drawn between Goldwater in 64 and Trump, I think you're all wet. Trump is not a conservative. The parallel to Reagan and Goldwater completely breaks down and fails.
No. You're right. I was not making no ideological component here. I didn't mean that. I'm simply drawing a pattern of behavior by the establishment to whoever is trying to take over.
That's the core of the problem. You keep presenting the opposition to Trump as this monolithic establishment thing. I am not establishment. I never have been. I never will be. And I am absolutely anti-Trump. I call myself a constitutional conservative, a principled conservative. Right. And there's a whole lot of us out there that also don't want Trump. And we may be temporarily aligned with the quote-unquote establishment, but that doesn't mean I back them either.
I'm not saying that you are.
I hate the idea that you're presenting anti-Trump as all monolithic establishment.
I'm not. No, you are inferring that. I'm not saying anything of this. But you weren't at Sea Island, Georgia this weekend meeting with those people plotting to stop Trump, were you? That's who I was talking
about. They aren't all establishment either. Are you saying Ben Sass is establishment?
They are all establishment. That's the whole point.
Ben Sass is establishment?
In this instance, he is. He was with them. What are you talking about? He's aligned with the...
Like I said, there are aligned objectives of beating Trump without them necessarily being the same.
Okay, so what really is your grievance with me here? You don't like being lumped...
It felt like you were using that parallel to say that it's exactly the same, and this is what the establishment's doing, but the opposition to Trump is not all establishment. And there may even be some teaming up between the anti-Trump non-establishment and the establishment to defeat him. But that doesn't mean they're in bed with each other on everything else.
I'm going to guess that who you're for is Ted Cruz.
Cruz or Rubio. I could pick either one. I think Rubio gets short shrift. And I find the people who say, I can never vote for Rubio, therefore I vote for Trump, complete hypocrites. They can't ignore one thing Rubio did when everything else he did was conservative, but they'll ignore all of Trump's past. How do you do that?
Okay.
Well, I could vote for either Rubio or Cruz.
Okay, cool. All right. Fine. But you have, look, don't take this personally. I was not trying to lump all opponents of Trump in with the establishment. Is it the establishment or the people with the power and are steering? Look at Kathy. The point is, the people I'm talking about are trying to deny you too. They're trying to stop you too, as well as they're trying to stop Trump.
Well, maybe so, but there's a whole lot of
maybe so, definitely so.
Conservatives who don't want Trump. I think he's going to do every bit as much damage as Clinton would do.
Okay, fine, but
you make it sound like a lot, very often, not always. Every now and then, I get a little nugget the other way, and I think, thank you for finally saying that. But most of the time, I'm thinking it really, really does come across that you're supporting Trump because of the anti-establishment, as if the opposition to him is monolithic, and it's not.
There we go. Okay.
That's part of why this is so emotional for so many people.
I understand. Well, you know what my answer is. I've told you today and any previous day that anybody was here listening, my preference, my requirement, the thing that I think must happen, or all this is academic, is the Democrats have to be beaten. The Democrats have to lose. And the difference
is why if it came down to Trump or Clinton, I would have a lot of soul searching to do.
Yeah.
It would not be an automatic, and I've never missed an election.
Well, then what would you do if it comes down to Trump versus Hillary? What do you? And if somebody runs third party, would you go for them?
That would be really hard. I would have a lot of soul searching to do. I would probably end up voting for Trump, but I would have to hold my nose harder than I did for Romney.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. I hear you. Well, I understand.
And I would be praying that he doesn't do what I expect he will.
Well, what's that? What do you think?
I think he's going to be just as bad as Obama in terms of working to make the presidency more imperial. That it's going to be all about him. It's going to be all about he'll try to do things he can't do constitutionally, and there'll be all kinds of battles.
Kathy, can I help you with that for just a second? Let's play a little hypothetical here. Let's say Trump's elected. And we're still going to have Democrats in the House and Senate, and we're going to have Republican establishment types in the House and Senate. Now, the reason Obama has been able to get away with his authoritarianism is that the Republicans have basically checked out of the game, and they have said they're not going to do one thing to stop Obama, and they're not. Impeachment's been taken off the table, and they're not even going to oppose. Mitch McConnell said we're not going to even oppose anything in this year because it might affect our presidential campaign. Now, I'm just.
And that's wrong, but I don't think all Republicans have stepped out. I just think they're too small of a minority. I think we need.
I don't care. They run the places, and so they set the agenda, and the agenda is no stopping Obama. Therefore, Obama is unchecked.
You think they're going to stop Trump when he's their guy?
I am telling you that if Trump gets elected, you're going to see more unity between the Republicans and Democrats and stopping any Trump authoritarianism than you have ever seen in your life. Because they're going to hate it, they're going to despise the guy, and they're going to align together to stop him if he tries executive orders. If he tries
they'll take the same position that a lot of the Trump supporters have today, that he's a bully, but he's our bully, so it's okay.
Well, his supporters might, but his supporters are not going to be in Congress. I'm asking, get past your anger at me. I'm setting up a hypothetical here. I'm trying to comfort you. Trump is not going to be able to get away with Obamaism because Obama has a compliant Republican Party. Trump is going to have a Democrat Party that's not going to say, you know what, We can't stop him. We're afraid of offending people. We're afraid. They'll be talking impeachment on day 2 after the first Trump executive order. In fact, Trump winning may be exactly what you want. You might finally get to see unified opposition to the guy. You got to think about all this stuff, folks. You have to. You have to understand all these comparisons, Trump and Obama. I understand them, but Obama would only be getting away with it, is only getting away with it because the Republican Party is non-existent. Well, I'm telling you, the Democrats don't play that way. Trump, if he wins, will be a Republican, and if he does authoritarian stuff that the Democrats want, then I guarantee you the Republicans will stand up and stop him. He's not African American. He's not a minority. They won't be worried about any of that. I have to take a break. But just follow the thinking here, folks, and chill out. Brett Baier, Fox News Channel, said that he knows a lot of Republicans, Washington Republicans, saying privately they'll vote Hillary if they have to. They will not vote Trump. A lot of Washington. I've heard that, too. Some of them have even been quoted as saying that they will do that. But I'm going to expand this hypothesis. I'm afraid this might have gone over Kathy's head because she was so focused on what I'm doing wrong. But I want you to imagine Trump. If you're worried about Trump as nothing more than an authoritarian Obama and may do either similar things or different things, but still poses that threat. I want you to stop and think of how it'll be different than it is under Obama in our hypothetical. Because the Democrats are not going to sit down and just let it happen unless he's doing their agenda. And I know some of you fear that that's what's on tap. But we'll play this out tomorrow. The only way Obama has gotten away with all this authoritarian executive order stuff is the Republican Party hasn't stopped him. You want to see an opposition party in action? Take a look at the Democrats down the road.